morning, St. Mary's. We are at our weekly video session. And I was praying this morning, and I was really hoping I could talk about. So this is a book, just different stories about really fascinating. It's called The Warning, and it basically just has people's testimonies of some of them had died, and their experience, at their death or whatever. Their near-death experiences is typically the term that's coined there. So unfortunately, I need permission, which is a bummer. But I will try at one point to read the story that I think just pertained to me quite a bit. But it was just phenomenal. I mean, the way that was written. And oftentimes with personal revelation, you don't have to believe it. Like if you read something, it's not like if you don't believe it, you're committing a sin or whatever. But you can if it helps you, right? If it encourages you to grow in virtue and stuff like that, then the church allows us to believe in private revelations. But yeah, it's basically so in line with Scripture that would be hard to argue against. So this week we're going to talk about more catechesis, which is good because the more we learn about the faith, the better, and we can explain it to people, because a lot of times people think that Catholics are idiots, and if we are just kind of if we don't have a response, even in our own minds, then it can challenge our faith a little bit. So once again, going back to my massive, this is like a phone book essentially of everything you need to know about the Catholic Church. It's awesome. But it talks about whether good works are necessary for salvation, and I think that the answer is yes. Obviously, there are a lot of Protestant denominations that think that it's faith alone that saves us, but yeah, I think that's always like a humongous question mark for me. It's just like, well, wait a minute, like how can you have read the Bible like so many times and been so focused on the Bible and still kind of make that assessment or make that claim? And so from here, this is kind of the best explanation of why good works are necessary for salvation. And if we don't perform good works, then we don't have salvation. So it says, our Lord says, "Every tree that does not yield good fruit shall be cut down and cast into the fire. At the last judgment, he will require good works of us. Remember the parable of the barren fig, barren fig tree, Luke 13, verse 6, the 10 virgins, Matthew 25, the talents, verse 16 of Matthew 25. And then God is not satisfied with mere integrity of life, which consists in not being guilty of murder or theft or cheating or evil practices of any kind. And so he lists, the obvious ones of, when the Lord expects us to do something, right, with our faith. It can't just be like, I'm a Christian and that's sufficient. But it really does, he really does lay it out. And the one that was yesterday's reading, where the talents were being talked about, where he says that he gives 10 to one, 5 to another, and 1 to last. And the one that just buries his talent, which is essentially, it was a gold coin worth like $600,000 or something like that, or it was a sum of money that was worth about that amount in today's value. And so it just goes to show you that he did nothing, right? He didn't do anything with the talent that he'd been received. And you can actually, it's a very easy way to translate what does a talent mean. I was just reading my book, The Warning, this morning, and he was asking this lawyer who had passed away, and he was being judged. He said, "I have given you this gift. I have given you this gift. I have given you this gift." And he said he's incredibly sad. Jesus was incredibly sad while he was relaying all this information to him. And he was asking him, "What did you do with these gifts?" And he said, "Well, Lord, I provided for my family, and I have, them going to the best colleges, and I have them, and my family is in a safe place, and X, Y, and Z." and he looked down sad. And he said, I've given you so much, and then what have you done to relieve the pain of these thousands, of me? And then he goes into the parable that talks about on the last day, I will, separate the goats from the sheep, and there'll be some on the right and some on the left. The right will be the ones who cared for him, fed him, clothed him, did works, right? Like did actual motions, in their life with their faith, right? They put their faith into action. And then the others that didn't were simply caught up in the desires of the world, right? So he says a lot of the time, take heed that, or like the seed that sprouted up, the four different seeds, the one that sprouted up, and then it got caught by the thorns. And he said that the thorns were the cares and the concerns of our daily lives that we just get so consumed in. And we kind of miss the picture, right? Like we miss the ability to kind of give to those in need. And in the Old Testament, it's actually fascinating because, money's tight, especially like nowadays. But I think in Sirach, he says, give when you're in necessity, and you will be provided for when it's your turn, or like whenever you're in need, God will provide for you. So it's just kind of an interesting point to keep in mind, that charity radically, in Jesus' mind, radically outdoes our just normal conception of it, right? We wouldn't think about, some of the things, like if someone, ask us to walk 1 mile, go 2, which basically just means like if someone's bothering you, like be of great service to that particular person, right? If someone like is asking more than you think you deserve, they deserve, make sure that you're giving them double of what they want, which is crazy, but like that's kind of Jesus' standard. And then when we die on the last day, like he'll just be like beaming, right? Like, whoa, this guy's a Christian, because he just like maxes out. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to reading. But when Protestants ask the question, like, well, Catholics believe that we work our way to heaven, which is true, right? In a sense, like we can't just do nothing, right? Because then we'll be with the goats who are just like, oh wait, I didn't do anything, and I didn't feed you, I didn't clothe you, I didn't do X, Y, and Z. But we don't say that you can never earn heaven, right? You can never pay back God, first of all, the debt that we owe, and then second of all, the reward which he gives us. There's nothing we can do. That's pure gift. But we can surely lose it, right? We have the opportunity to turn that away. And the church's teaching is, are we in the state of grace when we die? And not only, and it kind of goes back to, and so I'll read this part here. They have received the reward if a man subscribes to some charitable object. Okay. Where'd it go? Oh, I lost my page. Dang it. But he said, okay, imagine if you hired some people, and one of the people wasn't doing anything bad, but he wasn't doing anything good either. So like if he was just sitting there and he was just like not doing his work, he wasn't stealing stuff, but he wasn't doing his work, you would just dismiss him, right? You would say, hey, like, what you're doing is not sufficient, right? So in the same way with God, we might not be doing anything bad, but are we doing anything good? Like, are we doing what is Jesus is asking of us in the scriptures? Are we feeding the poor? Are we trying to pray the rosary for the holy souls in purgatory? That alone is sufficient, far beyond what we can imagine, right? That's a huge thing. Are we praying? Are we in prayer, just like reflecting, okay, Lord, like, are we actually asking the question to ourselves, like, Lord, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, help me to see what's in my heart that I need to change, right? And oftentimes, like, he'll answer that prayer pretty quick, right? He wants us to grow in union with him, and that is ultimately our goal here on earth. So I think that last thing, when going back to the Protestants who say, when you can't work your way to heaven, no, that's true, and it's not, but we can lose it, number one. And then I always like to ask them, what does faith mean when you say that we are saved by faith alone? Do we just have to believe that Jesus existed, or like do we just have to believe X, Y, and Z? No, like when when we are saved by faith, well, that doesn't mean that we just believe that Jesus existed whatever amount of time, right? Ago or 2,000 years ago. We believe that he was the Son of God and everything he said is truth, right? So that's what it means to say, I have faith in Jesus. Not just like, oh, I just have faith that he's just going to randomly save me for no reason whatsoever. But we actually believe that, okay, we believe in this Jesus, and then we're going to follow him with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength. Okay, that's the first commandment. That's one of the commandments that Jesus gives us. And so that's like what we're going to be judged on. And so that is important. And then again, next week, I'm going to elaborate on what that means based on this guy's experience, because I think it's really important to know what each of our judgments are going to look like, because we would study for any other exam that has significance in our lives, so we might as well particularly be putting a boatload of time into figuring out what this exam is going to look like. And then that'll be grateful. Then we'll be grateful that we did so. So, okay, cool. I think that is it. There's always more to be said, but we're over time. So I will see you next week. God bless you. Bye.